Well, ladies, yesterday was a historic day here in Nigeria. The country finally launched a sexual offenders register. That's correct?
Yes.
At the national level, because some will argue that indeed some states, it's not the first time we've heard of the sexual offenders register. I think Lagos and Ekiti as well have the sexual offenders register. Lagos launched theirs in 2014. But you visited Nigeria to lend your voice to this. How do you feel that Nigeria is taking this at the national level?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigeria. I think it was an extremely wonderful moment, and in my speech yesterday, I mentioned that yesterday was a historic day in the feminist calendar of this nation. If you look at the stories of rape, abuse, and sexual violence from Nigeria or from Liberia, and you listen to the stories from here, it's common. There's a common theme in all of Africa. And I think that this country has taken the first step towards ending impunity. They're also taking the first step towards ending impunity for other crimes that would erupt. Because rape and abuse and violence against women is one of the worst crimes we see in our communities every day. But perpetrators go free. And even in cases where they are convicted, they serve time in prison, when they're released to community to just go back and do the things that they've done before. So this nation is, I would say, one of the greatest in West Africa, and that they're taking the lead on women's rights in this area is something that we as activists and feminists in other countries can now say, see, Nigeria has done this. It's time for you, Liberia. It's time for you, Ghana. It's time for you, Sierra Leone, because every other country have done different things. In our country, we have a rape law, 12 to life. It used to be non-bailable. And then in Sierra Leone, they call for a national emergency on sexual violence. So leading the way now, publicly, nationally, with an instrument to name and shame, this is the right thing we need in this 21st century.
But there are questions, there are huge questions as to how effective this is going to be. I think first Nigeria is operating an offences-based register. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think there have been arguments amongst the experts as to whether or not an offences-based register is as effective as an actual risk-based register. Why have we opted for this offences-based register?
One of the things that informs this choice is that there is a plethora of actions that you need to take to respond to gender-based violence. One of those that our communities have not taken up is the acknowledgement and the pinpointing of offenders. You find in families known pedophiles, known rapists are covered by their families. They also, like Lima said, go into communities unknown to people and they continue. So for us, we feel we've taken out gender-based violence from the cupboards because people are now speaking more. There's higher reportage. Now we also need to pinpoint and also hold to account. Accountability is very important in responding to gender-based violence. And one way to start is to identify who is the offender. See what you can do. The modern way of handling it is see his problem or her problem and then deal with it.
I ask you that question because we have a low conviction rate. Isn't that right? Yes. Indeed, there is high rate of reportage now. More people are coming out of the closet.
Yes.
But we're still not seeing the figures that we should be seeing through the prosecution system. Not a lot of people are being convicted over rape issues. So would you really say that this would be an effective means of ensuring that people who could pose a risk, because I think the idea is to protect vulnerable people in society, that the people who could be a risk to children and perhaps women or men, as the case might be, I think we'll come to that shortly, are actually getting the sort of punishment or, you know, the kind of isolation which they deserve?
Yes, they would be getting. You see, the legal system is a different thing from the social system. One of the things that is happening is social accountability. The sexual offenders register would help the end of social accountability. Legal accountability is one that goes into the courts and has its systems and ways of proof, and the elements of proof in rape, especially in this country, are very, very onerous, and we find it difficult to get the numbers we are looking for in conviction. What you need to probably push forward is that when the social end has a zero tolerance to sexual offenses and sexual offenders, a zero tolerance to their presence and the risks they pose, it may help to raise down the numbers of the offenses. But then the legal system needs also to be looked into, and that's why in the beginning I said to you that the sexual offenders register is only one of the mechanisms that we're using to respond to a reduction in gender-based violence in Nigeria.
Indeed, so it's not yet Uhuru, so let's ask. We're far from it, it would seem. But I mean, as you said, we've taken a step. Let's ask you, Priscilla, how big is this step? Yesterday also marked the day of action, I think, 16 days of action and 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. It's very interesting that the word gender is used here, even though it would seem that women are owning this more. How do you think this also works for the men?
First and foremost, the sexual offenders register is set within the context of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Law. And this law, it's a gender-related law, so it applies to men and women, boys and girls. So technically, the register, even though it's owned by women, belongs to all. The second thing is that this register has several aspects to it. The first aspect is that, and it's not available to the public, it's the reported cases, and which is what Saudatu has spoken about. We get to respond to the social issues there. The reported cases are not made available to the public, but only available on request. So for the social services that we need the register to serve, the data will be available. The data that will be available for public use is the data of convicted offenders. And you've made the point that the judicial system is slow. We do know that there are challenges around conviction. And ethically speaking, the idea is that we don't want too many names on the register. If it was our choice, there would be no name on the register. And so ultimately, we are saying that we want a zero-based violence against women and girls. And so the register itself, it names and shames, but it's not our desire to have so many names there. We just want to deter. The second aspect of the register, which I do not think we should lose sight of, is that apart from naming and shaming offenders, it is also a service provider register. So what we are saying is that anybody who suffers social violence, anyone who is raped, can find where to go for succor, for help, for support. And the list of these service providers is also available on the register. So it is, I think, a tool that is useful positively and also can name and shame, as the case may be.
Let me quickly get this straight. Are you saying then that there are two registers that we have? Do we have a sexual, beg your pardon, an offences-based register and a risk-based register? Is that what you're confirming that we have?
So it is a digital platform. It is a register for sexual offenders and a service provider register. So basically what we're saying is that there's a section where we enter offenders' names and data for the records to name and shame, but there is also a section that is available for victims who need help to know where to go to for their services that they need. You know, this issue of sexual crimes, rape, violence have ethical implications. The moment a victim reports that an act of violence has been committed, ethically, it triggers a referral mechanism. Therefore, you need to do something about it. And so what we're saying is that when people report, we have information on the register as to where to go and seek help. For example, there are the states in the country, through the support of the rule of law and anti-corruption program that have established sexual assault and referral centers. There are civil society organizations like the one that is run by Sadiya that provide legal psychosocial support to victims of violence. Their information is also on the register. So anyone who needs help and does not know where to go for help can find information about services available on the register.
Let me ask you, how big a problem is this? You have lent your voice, not just in situations of conflict. You actually led a movement in Liberia to help bring peace. You led the women there. It was said that usually in situations of conflict, women are more vulnerable. But out of situations of conflict, outside situations of conflict, would you say that we are as vulnerable as we normally would be in situations of conflict?
Well, so let me say this. Before UN Women became UN Women, they were UNIFEM, and in the years where wars were really all over our region, they commissioned a study on women, peace, and security. And this study was conducted by our former President Sirleaf and Elizabeth Wren, who was a former defense minister in Finland. And one of the conclusions of that report was that the impact of conflict on women's lives is a reflection of the interaction during peacetime. So it's almost like a mirror image. What you see during war in Liberia, an estimated 65% of women were raped and sexually abused during the war. So that statistics is a mirror of what was happening in peacetime. So last night at this event, I said, God forbid, and please, I don't want the wrath of the Nigerian people, but God forbid, if there was ever a civil conflict in this country, what you're seeing now, the statistics of rape and abuse, is going to either triple or double, because it is a reflection. So the problem is big during peacetime based on all of the stereotypical roles that have been assigned to the different genders. Even in our schools, you have, in the 21st century, young children still being taught that mommy stays at home and daddy work. Daddy drives and mommy doesn't drive. Women are nurses and teachers and boys are engineers and doctors and pilots and all of these different things. But also, you also have children who have been socialized to believe that the total sum of a woman is her reproductive capability. Share 2 quick points with you. During my past life, when I was working with child soldiers, I had the situation of engaging 2. And the question was, to one of them, did you rape during the war? And he said, this is a 16-year-old boy who had gone at the age of 7 up until he got amputated. And he said, no, I didn't rape anyone. So I realized that he didn't understand this question. I said, okay, let's reframe this. Did you force any woman using your gun to have sex? He said, oh, is that what you're talking about? Yes. But ma, isn't that what women were made for? Fast forward, I'm in a peaceful country, peaceful. This country has never seen a day of war. And this little boy tell a little girl who says, we should celebrate women because it's International Women's Day. Shut up and sit down. What are women good for but making babies? If you swap those 2 children, if you take this little boy in this peaceful country and put a gun in his hand, his normal reaction to a woman or his urge or his desire would be to exploit. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what do we have or what are we doing in our society that we are persistently having these cases? The objectification of women as sex objects and all of the different things, the socialization of our boys and all of these different things, these are things that we need to seriously look at and say to ourselves, it's time to put an end to it. Because it's without a doubt, or I'll say this, the culture we have, especially in West Africa, is a culture of exploiting women. Rich people use it, powerful people use it, our girls are not safe. And so if you ask how widespread it is, I would say on a scale of 100, maybe 95 is, because I'm being generous this morning.
That is really, really wide indeed. Well, we do have situations of, you know, parts of this country have experienced conflict situations. I mean, even the Northeast is still facing some amounts of insurgency. Women are in camps. There have been stories about sex for food scandals breaking out and things of the sort. But this is a national register. How is this going to work, considering the fact that even some of our laws, we have to domesticate them? Do you think that this will have any effect in the places where it is needed?
Yes, it will be a subject of how much governments and response institutions use it. In working with women who or persons at risk, and also those that have become victims, there is a chain of service providers. So the first thing is to ensure that there's a multi-agency understanding and uptake of the tool, so that civil society, government hospitals, police stations, and all of that are working in unison and using the register. The second level is also to take it to the grassroots and to also use the easiest means and links that people can access it and utilize it. But it's not the same as a law being domesticated. This is an instrument that is there available for everyone who can go online and access it. So the difference between a legal instrument that needs to be domesticated and this tool is that one is accessible, the other one you have to go through a certain provision in the Constitution for it to take effect nationally. The second reason why I think it will be effective is because there is a very, very wide conscientization now around people. People are no longer willing to have more in their neighborhoods. So what that means is we need to popularize. That is, we need to tell people about this instrument and teach them how to. Probably we need to even look at the technology behind it. How can we simplify the technology so that it becomes more accessible? The same way you can do a WhatsApp chat, can people access it that way? Thirdly, NGOs and the media in particular need to also take this up as an assignment. The mediums of communication with people need to say, this is available, this is how you can utilize it, and then continuously entice people to its benefits and also entice people to its availability. Fourthly, and I think this is the most important, victims and survivors of gender-based violence need to know that there is help out there, that they can access help, their perpetrator can be held to account, and that they can find respite in some place using that register. Yes.
So quickly, can you just speak to anyone who is watching this program who is saying, I've been through sexual-based violence, I do not know how to get my case heard, and I would like the people who have done this or the person who has done this to me to get punished?
So, we have NAPTIP at the federal level, which is the agency that is responsible for the implementation of the VAP Act. And NAPTIP has come up with a short code, which is 627#, where any member of the public can call.
Let me get this again. #627#.
Yes. This service for now is available only on Airtel. It works on an SMS base. So what you need to do is to call that number, and then you will get a response within 24 hours. Someone will come to you and advise you on what to do. NAPTIP has been actually proactive in leading prosecution in this area. The police, the National Civil Defense Corps, have also signed up to the register. They are the primary respondents in cases of violence. So people are still welcome to call the police, to go to NSCDC and report cases of violence.
And they have the expertise to be able to handle such cases?
Well, NAPTIP has a legal unit. The police are the primary prosecutors in the state.
Okay.
And there are also civil society organizations that help. by referring cases for prosecution. So the services are existing at the moment for the FCT level. That is where to go. But for victims and survivors of violence, we also have the sexual assault and referral centers. Now, we do not have one yet for the FCT. It's in process of being put in place. But there are other states in the Federation that we have sexual assault and referral centers. Actually, there are 15 sexual assault and referral centers spread across the country, in Kaduna, in Lagos, in Anambra, Adamawa, in Enugu, so people can go there and seek help. The sexual assault and referral centers are really one-stop comprehensive service provider centers. So there you can get medical examination, you can get free medical examination, you can get psychosocial support, trauma counseling. You can also get access to lawyers who can take up your case and prosecute if you're interested in pursuing the matter. In all of these, matters are treated with confidentiality. It's a survivor-centered approach where human rights are respected. We don't force people who do not want to go to court. But if you do want to prosecute the case, we advise you on how best to do that.
Well, you've heard them. Help is available. Call #627#. Only on Airtel, sadly. We're hoping that the other networks will sign up to this and make sure that everybody is able to get help when they need it.